One late afternoon in the slums, two young black twin boys crawled through the city's underground tunnels, hunting for broken pieces of discarded tech. Suddenly they spotted a man, trapped, tied up, and left behind beneath a crumbling passageway. Without hesitation, they rushed to pull him from danger. What they didn't know was that when that man woke up, they'd be handed a chance to change their lives in a way they never dared to dream. I love knowing where my viewers are from. Let's get into the story. It was hot. Not the kind of hot that made you sweat and wipe your forehead, but the kind that stuck to your skin and made the whole world smell like fried garbage. North Philly heat. The kind of heat that made babies cry and old folks cuss from their porches, waving torn cardboard like it made a damn difference. The streets shimmered under the late afternoon sun, and the air buzzed with the sound of a neighborhood trying its best to keep going. Tariq and Malik Boone were right there in the middle of it. Two 14-year-old boys, same height, same sharp cheekbones, same stubborn jawline. Twins, but not clones. Tariq walked a step behind, dragging a beat-up laundry basket with a busted wheel that kept squealing every third step, like it was begging to stop. His eyes darted from side to side, quiet and calculating, like he was always reading a map no one else could see. His dark brown skin shimmered under the sweat, and his thin t-shirt clung to his back like plastic wrap. He didn't say much, but when he did, it always hit right where it needed to. Malik, on the other hand, moved like the sidewalk owed him something. Chin high, shoulders bouncing with each step, his old boots hitting the concrete hard like he wanted the street to remember his name. He had a ragged bandana tied around his forehead, and a small tool pouch strapped to his belt like he was on some mission. His face was scrunched up against the sun, but his mouth curled at the corners like he was halfway to smiling, even when there wasn't a damn thing funny around here. They weren't playing. Nobody in this part of the city had time for play, not really. The Boone twins were working, hustling, surviving, building dreams out of scraps. The laundry basket was filled with what most folks would call trash. Frayed wires, broken headphones, and a dusty motherboard, but to them this was gold. Recyclables. Rebuildables. Future. "We fixed that Wi-Fi chip," Tariq finally said, wiping his arm across his nose, leaving a streak of grime. "We might get Grandma's tablet to stop lagging, or at least run YouTube without freezing every 10 seconds. Malik snorted. "Man, if we can get that thing to run anything other than battery low, I'll frame it." They passed by a row of apartments where paint peeled off the walls like sunburnt skin. A woman was arguing with someone upstairs about bills and broken promises. Down the block, a kid was crying beside a flipped-over bike. Life happened loud out here, and nobody ever apologized for it. But the boys didn't slow. They turned down a narrow alley off Chestnut Street that stunk like old diapers and engine oil. At the end of that alley was a manhole cover marked with faint red chalk and a scuffed handprint. Their handprint. This was their spot, their door to what they called the workshop, even if it smelled like mold and sounded like rats fighting over dinner. Underneath that manhole was a maze of forgotten tunnels, abandoned sewer lines, and a world most people avoided, but not them. Down there, the Boone twins were kings of jump. Malik bent over and yanked off the cover using the bent crowbar he kept tied to his belt. It made a grinding groan, metal on metal, like the city herself was complaining. A thick wave of hot, stale air whooshed out, thick with the scent of rust, sewage, and time. He grinned at Tariq without saying a word. Tariq just sighed, took off his backpack, and climbed down first, his boots hitting each rung with a dull thud. The tunnel swallowed them up. The world above dimmed, narrowed, quieted. Inside, the air felt heavier, like breathing through a damp towel. Water dripped from unseen cracks above. Something scurried in the dark. And it was hot. Not outside hot, but wet. Underground hot, where every breath felt like sucking on a warm sponge. But it was familiar. Comforting, even. They reached a side passage where they'd stored their collection. An old tablet that blinked sometimes when you shook it, a desk lamp missing its cord, a cracked Nintendo controller, a busted RC car with no wheels, but a working motor. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Then Tariq froze. He held up a hand. Malik stopped instantly. "You hear that?" Tariq whispered, voice low and tight. Malik squinted, tilting his head, listening. First there was nothing. Then, faint. Barely there. A sound. A voice? A groan? Like someone trying to cry without getting caught? It came from the blocked-off tunnel ahead, the place their mama told them to never go, the one with yellow paint on the walls and warning signs half torn and covered in grime. Malik pulled the flashlight from his belt. Tariq grabbed the small crowbar, his fingers trembling just a little. They moved forward, slower now, careful, their boots making wet, squishing sounds on the damp floor. The smell got worse. Not just sewage now, but something sharp, like metal and sweat and blood. Then they saw him. A man, white, middle-aged maybe, was slumped against the wall, legs twisted under a collapsed metal beam. His arms were pulled forward and zip-tied together. His shirt was torn, his face bruised, a line of dried blood crusted above one eyebrow. He was breathing fast, panicked, chest jerking like an engine trying to start but failing. When he saw them, he flinched. Tried to back away but couldn't. Don't rob me," he gasped, voice hoarse and broken. "Please, I don't have anything." Malik took a step back, his heart hammering in his ears. "Yo, what the hell?" Tariq didn't move. His voice came out calm, but it wobbled at the edges. "We're not here to rob you, man. We heard you. You're stuck." The man blinked slowly, confused as if the idea that someone might help hadn't occurred to him. "They left me," he whispered. "They tied me up. I can't move my leg." Tariq crouched, not too close, just enough to see better. "You're bleeding," he said. "How long you been down here?" I don't know," the man muttered. "Hours, maybe more. I think I passed out." Malik looked up at the ceiling, sniffed the air, stiffened. "Smells like rain," he said. "Big one's coming." Tariq looked at his brother, then back at the man. "Then we'd better hurry." Tariq's hands were already at work, tugging at the straps on his backpack, fingers moving fast but focused. His voice was calm, but inside something trembled, an ache deep in his chest that he didn't have a name for yet. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was knowing too much about what could go wrong when help didn't come. Malik crouched beside the trapped man, who had gone nearly limp again, his chest rising and falling in shallow bursts. His skin, pale and soaked with sweat, looked wrong down here, out of place, like a clean shirt dropped in the mud. There was blood crusting at the man's temple, a dark line cutting through the dirt on his face, and his leg. That was the worst part. It was pinned under a twisted piece of steel that had once been part of some maintenance platform, now collapsed and half buried in the muck. "We don't got time to think," Malik muttered, pulling the rusted multi-tool from his belt. "You lift, I dig." "We don't get him out now, he's done." Tariq nodded, pulling out the coil of makeshift rope from his bag. An nylon cord knotted with old bike cables, frayed hoodies strings, and 2 carabiners they'd found behind an auto shop. It wasn't pretty, but it was strong. Above them, somewhere far away, the first deep growl of thunder rolled through the tunnel like a warning from the sky. Then came the faintest sound of water dripping faster than before. Then faster still. Plink, 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 plink. Tariq's eyes shot upward. Malik froze for half a breath. And then it hit. A sudden, violent whoosh echoed through the pipe like a freight train. Rainwater surged down like a beast, full of city grime and trash. "Go," Tariq shouted. "We don't got 5 minutes." Malik jammed the crowbar beneath the steel beam. Teeth gritted, arms shaking. The metal groaned. Tariq wrapped the rope around the beam, looped the ends to the bars on the sidewall, using rusted bolts and instinct. They didn't have a plan. They just had to move. "I got it, push," Malik yelled, and Tariq pulled with everything he had. The beam shifted. An inch. then 2. The man screamed, not from pain but from shock, like he didn't believe his body could still feel anything. Malik reached in and yanked the man's torso upright while Tariq kept pulling. His arms burned, his palms ripped open. The rope dug into his skin and left angry lines. But he didn't stop, and then it gave. The beam slid enough for the man's leg to come free, twisted and swollen but movable. He collapsed into Malik's arms, groaning like something ancient. The tunnel was flooding now, ankle-deep and rising fast. The water was cold, slimy, full of things you didn't want to see in the daylight. Tariq grabbed the man's wrist and threw his arm over his shoulder. "We gotta move now," Malik yelled. They half-carried, half-dragged the man through the rising sludge. The flashlight flickered, then died. The tunnel went black except for the lightning flashing above through the grates. Every step was a guess. Every breath tasted like mold. Tariq's foot slipped on the slime-coated concrete and he fell hard, the man landing on top of him with a grunt. Malik scrambled back, grabbed both their arms, yanked them upright. "I see a ladder," Tariq shouted, pointing to a rickety maintenance shaft. Metal rungs bolted into a concrete wall slick with algae and rust. Malik dropped to one knee, looped the rope around the man's chest and shoulders, tied it off with a knot he'd learned from watching a video once. Something about rock climbing. He didn't know if it would hold. He just prayed. "You pull him," Malik ordered. "I'm under." "I'll push." Tariq nodded, lips tight, arms screaming with effort. The man was heavy, not just body heavy, but the kind of weight that came with age, fear, and money. The kind of man who'd never once had to climb out of a sewer in his life. They moved. One rung at a time. The water rose past their knees, swirling with wrappers, sticks, rats. Malik's boot slipped more than once. His hand caught on a jagged pipe. Blood mixed with the filth. Tariq grunted with every pull. Teeth clenched, his muscles stretched to their edge. A flash of lightning lit up the shaft from above. The grate was open, blown loose by the storm. They were close, so close. "I got it!" Malik shouted, and with one last push, the man's hand reached the rim of the opening. Tariq grabbed it, hauled him over the edge with the last ounce of strength he had. Then, suddenly, all was still. The water below kept churning, but they were out. The man lay sprawled on the wet street, coughing up sewer water and muttering something that didn't make sense. Malik climbed out after, soaked, bloodied, and shaking. Tariq dropped to the pavement, chest heaving, vision swimming. They didn't speak. Not at first. They just sat there. 3 figures, broken and shivering in the rain, surrounded by trash and thunder. No one came running. No sirens. No applause. Just the sound of the storm passing through, and the quiet gasp of a man who should have drowned, but didn't. The hospital room buzzed with machines and antiseptic light. Preston Thorne blinked up at the ceiling, his throat dry, his head pounding with every heartbeat, his leg wrapped and elevated, numb but heavy. He didn't remember getting there. Last thing he remembered was rain on his face, cold as ice, and 2 hands, small hands, too small for the weight they were carrying, pulling him out of that hellhole. Then black. Then silence. He turned his head slowly, the motion scraping something in his neck. That's when he saw them. 2 boys, sitting against the wall. Dirty, soaked, their clothes clung to their skinny frames, dried now in patches of mud and sewer water. Malik's hands were wrapped in gauze, blood having leaked through like pink flowers blooming on white cloth. Tariq had a bandage over his temple, one eye slightly swollen. But they were both upright, awake, watching him without saying a word. Preston's mouth opened. No words came. The older nurse walked in, flipping a page on her clipboard. She glanced at him, nodded like she was surprised he was conscious. "You lucky, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice thick with southern rhythm. "They said another 15 minutes, your lungs might have filled up." He blinked, tried again. "Them?" He pointed weakly toward the boys. "They brought me in?" She followed his eyes, then smiled. Yes, sir. Pulled you out the ground like a miracle, and they wouldn't leave till they knew you were alive. Sat right there 6 hours, even though the lobby folks told them they couldn't. Malik looked up then. We weren't going to let you die after all that. His voice was low, hoarse from the sewer and the yelling and the fear. Would have felt like wasted effort. Tarek shrugged beside him. And your wallet wasn't even worth stealing. Preston coughed. Maybe it was a laugh. Or maybe his ribs still hurt. He looked at them, really looked this time, and for the first time that day, he saw something more than 2 black boys covered in grime. He saw courage. He saw clarity. And he saw himself, years ago, before he wore suits that cost more than rent and forgot how to look someone in the eye without calculating their worth. What are your names? He asked. Tariq raised an eyebrow. Don't matter. No, really, Preston said, voice a little steadier now. I want to know. Malik scratched his chin. Well, we mostly go by Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 down in them tunnels. He jerked his thumb toward his brother. He's the brains, I'm the hustle. Tariq, his brother added, almost like a confession. Malik. Preston closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, and this time, the edge in his stare had softened just a bit. Well? Tariq? Malik? Thank you. There was a pause, just that word, sitting in the air like it wasn't used to being said, like it had taken a wrong turn and ended up in the wrong neighborhood. Tariq didn't answer. Malik stood, brushing invisible dirt off his jeans. We good now? He asked. 'Cause Mom's gonna kill us if she sees us walking in smelling like a landfill. Preston tried to smile. It came out crooked. Wait, he said, just wait a second. Who told you how to use that pulley system down there? Tarek looked down at his shoes. Nobody. We just learn. Practice. Malik laughed. We build stuff. That's what we do. Ain't got much, but we got ideas. Preston stared at them, 2 kids from a world he had passed through but never stepped into. And now, those same kids had crawled through filth to drag him out of the one place no one would have expected to find him. He nodded slowly. You got ideas, he repeated. Yeah. I believe that. He didn't say more. He couldn't. Not yet. But inside something had cracked. Something had shifted. And it wasn't just the bruised ribs or the broken pride. It was the beginning of something else. 30 minutes before Tariq and Malik Boone stumbled across him, Preston Thorne had still believed he was in control. He stood at the mouth of an old maintenance tunnel deep beneath the city, flanked by 3 men he'd trusted more than most: Eli Ramos, his chief engineer, Derek Locke, the head of private security, and Jason Kemp, the city's underground systems supervisor. They were down there to inspect what Preston called a blinking ghost, a sensor in Sector D13 that had been sending false flood alerts for 3 nights straight, even though no rain had touched Philly all week. It wasn't on the official schedule. Preston wanted it quiet, in-house, discreet. I still say we send a crew next week, Ramos muttered, adjusting the strap on his tool bag. No, Preston replied firmly, stepping forward. I want eyes on it now. Something's off. The deeper they walked, the thicker the air became, wet, metallic, buzzing with the hum of old systems. The walls closed in tighter, curved concrete flaking with time, cables trailing along the ceiling like dead snakes. A flickering utility light cast long, jagged shadows behind them. Preston's boots squished with each step, the sludge rising higher around his soles. They reached the cross-junction where the sensor had last pinged. Jason opened the panel box. Still says breach warning, he confirmed, but no overflow readings. Then we're looking at tampering, Preston muttered, crouching beside the main valve. He didn't see it coming. A hand slammed into his back, hard, fast, calculated. He stumbled, forward into the concrete wall, his breath knocked clean out of him. A second later, something cracked against his temple, sharp, cold, metallic. His knees gave out. Darkness, folded over him. Is he out? Stiff him, keep the wrists tight. We ain't got long, rain's moving in. What about the cams? Already wiped. Preston tried to move, but his arms were useless, bound in front of him with heavy zip ties. His vision came back in shaky waves. He was on the floor, half buried under a fallen service beam. The others were already walking away. No urgency, no guilt. Derek paused once to glance back at him. Nothing personal, he said, but your name's too expensive for this city now. Then they were gone. The tunnel doors slammed shut. Total silence. Preston coughed. Pain screamed through his ribs. He couldn't lift his leg. It was pinned beneath the beam. He tried yelling. Once. Twice. No echo. No answer. Just the slow drip of sewer condensation and the creaking breath of old metal waiting to give out. He was alone. And for the first time in years, Preston Thorne felt powerless in the most literal way. No phone, no GPS, no bodyguard, no company banner to shield him. He didn't even have a name down here. He was just another trapped body, discarded in the dark. That's when it hit him. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that it didn't surprise him. He'd built his empire on promises. Promises of fixing the city's guts, making the invisible infrastructure clean, smart, efficient. He spoke at conferences, shook hands with mayors, sold vision. But the farther up he climbed, the less he recognized the people who climbed with him. And now here he was, on the ground, in the rot, with the truth. He was a liability, a signature waiting to be replaced. He closed his eyes, trying to slow the panic. His breath rattled. He thought of his daughter Camille, of the empty dinner plates she left untouched because he never made it home in time. He thought of the headlines he used to chase, the suits, the funding rounds, the billion-dollar press kits. None of that could move the steel beam pressing into his thigh. None of it could stop the rain that was surely on its way. All he had was time and silence, until he heard it. Footsteps. Not boots, not heavy, smaller, quicker, lighter. Voices. Young ones, muffled but growing clearer. And then, "Yo, you hear that?" A pause. Then a light. A voice, steady, calm, and too damn young to be that brave. "We're not here to rob you, but if you stay here, you're going to drown." Preston blinked against the dark. Maybe it was the pain, maybe it was the stink, maybe it was the sewer gas clouding his brain. But for the first time in all this mess, he felt something crack inside his chest. And it wasn't fear. It was hope. From the unlikeliest place imaginable. Preston Thorne couldn't sleep the night after he was discharged. It wasn't the pain in his leg or the dull ache still echoing through his ribs. The medication dulled that just fine. What kept him awake was the image, burned into the backs of his eyelids, of two boys waiting, soaked in sewer water, refusing to leave until the nurses confirmed he'd made it through the night. They didn't ask for anything. No reward, no thanks. They just sat there like it was normal, like saving someone's life was just part of their day. That image haunted him, not because of what it said about them, but because of what it revealed about him. Now, back in the penthouse office that once made him feel like a king looking over his city, Preston sat behind his immaculate desk, the skyline bleeding orange through the tinted glass, and for the first time in years he felt like a stranger in his own kingdom. He tapped into the security logs from the D13 tunnel, the last place he stood before the world tipped sideways. There was nothing, no footage, no audio, just digital white space where there should have been time-stamped proof, a clean wipe. Professional. Cold. It should have surprised him, but it didn't. Preston had seen enough contracts and cut corners in his life to know when someone wanted him erased. He dug deeper, not into the primary servers, those were scrubbed, but into a cache backup that had been disconnected for months, a redundant system left online by mistake or perhaps by mercy. There, buried under corrupted files and error codes, was a fragment of footage. 7 seconds of digital ghost. The camera was crooked, the angle tilted, the image grainy, but the betrayal was crystal clear. Preston, standing near the valve junction inspecting the panel. Derek Locke, his personal security chief, standing behind him. And then the motion, a shove, deliberate and fast. Preston lurching forward, out of frame. A blur of movement, then darkness. His stomach turned, his pulse slowed. Derek, the man who rode with him on city tours, who drank whiskey with him at investor parties, who once claimed he'd take a bullet for him. Derek had traded loyalty for leverage, and Preston had nearly drowned for it. He didn't call his legal team. He didn't alert corporate security. Instead, he reached for his phone and dialed a number that felt strange in his hand, unfamiliar in tone, but familiar in truth. Tariq answered, voice cautious and flat, like someone expecting the world to let them down again. "Hello?" Preston took a breath and made it simple. "It's me. I need your help. And I don't trust anyone else." There was a pause, long enough to stretch into doubt, until Malik's voice came through the background, firmer, clearer. "We're listening." Within the hour, the twins were in his private garage, not looking impressed by the imported cars or the smell of leather polish, but focused, alert, eyes already scanning the equipment he'd laid out. Tariq asked no questions. Malik immediately began digging through a stack of decommissioned drives. They worked with the calm precision of kids who had nothing to prove, only something to build. Using pieces from a gutted drone, parts from an old gaming rig, and a soldering tool Malik had tucked into his sock, they reconstructed a crude server bridge and pulled the backup logs from the processor Preston had salvaged from the field site. The files unfolded like dominoes, one after another. Not just video, but audio logs, location pings, silent comms. Enough to piece together not only the attack, but the entire conversation afterward. Jason Kemp, the city supervisor, saying, "We ghost him tonight. Project's ours by Monday." Ramos agreeing. Derek sealing the deal with, "Nobody's going to believe a dead billionaire slipped in sewage. He slips out of lawsuits, right?" Preston said nothing as he watched. His face didn't twist, didn't crack. It just went still. Not with anger, but with resolve. Something heavier than vengeance, colder than rage. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about rot. Not the kind that lived in pipes. The kind that dressed in tailored suits and shook hands with mayors. He thanked the boys, quietly, seriously, and within 48 hours Derek Locke and his co-conspirators were in federal custody, booked under charges that would bury their careers deeper than any sewer trench. But Preston didn't hold a press conference. He didn't feed the story to the media. There was no glory in a takedown when the real victory was still waiting underground. He resigned from Thorntech the next day, walking out without ceremony, without speeches. He turned down interviews, ignored phone calls, left the empire he'd built to those who still believed clean water and clean reputations could coexist without consequence. Instead, he returned to the alley where Malik and Tariq first found him, a cracked strip of pavement behind the rec center where wires dangled like dead ivy and the sewer cap still bore scuff marks from their rescue. The boys were there, tinkering with what looked like a broken ATM machine wired to a solar panel. He didn't interrupt them. He just waited until they looked up, eyes squinting at the man who didn't quite look like a CEO anymore. "I want to build something with you," Preston said. No suit, no tie, just a hoodie and a healed limp. Not for charity, not for PR. Because you see the city from the inside out, and I finally get why that matters. Tariq stared for a long moment. "You want to build with us or have us build it for you?" Preston smiled. "You name it, I'll fund it. And I'll follow your lead." Malik wiped grease off his palm onto his pants and gestured to a cardboard blueprint laid out beside a bucket of scrap metal. "We already started sketching something, might as well make it real." They bent over the plans together, 3 heads close, voices low, not talking about what had been lost, but what could be made from it. That night, the city didn't change. But something beneath it did. And it started not with concrete or contracts. It started with trust. The day they opened the first underlying center, the skies over North Philly hung low and gray, like the city itself was holding its breath. But that didn't stop the crowd from showing up. Folks came in work boots and faded hoodies, pushing strollers, holding umbrellas they didn't need yet. Teachers stood alongside welders, barbers, and grandmothers in folding chairs, and in the middle of it all, standing just a little too stiff in button-down shirts borrowed for the occasion, were Tarek and Malik Boone. They looked cleaner than usual, sure, but nothing could scrub out the nervous energy buzzing in their fingertips. These two boys, barely 14, were about to cut a ribbon on something bigger than anything they'd ever touched before. But they stood still, grounded, like kids who had seen what it meant to rise from beneath the city and still breathe. The center didn't look like much from the outside, just an old drainage structure that used to smell like rot and rust. Now it was alive. Murals of gears and copper coils danced across the walls, names of forgotten black inventors stitched into the paint like prayers. Inside, it was warm, filled with the humming of old machines brought back from the dead. Tables made of repurposed pallets held laptops pieced together from junkyards. In the corner, a 3D printer sputtered out a prototype water filter made from vacuum parts and soda bottles. And overhead, fluorescent lights flickered like they were proud to still be running. Malik had taken charge of teaching the kids who came after school. He didn't use a syllabus. He used stories. He'd pick up a bent processor board, hold it up and say, "This thing used to be trash, now it runs my robot's legs." Then he'd pass it around, let the kids touch it, feel the grime, and understand that knowledge wasn't about being clean. It was about being curious. And the kids, they listened. Because Malik didn't talk down, he talked straight. Tarek, meanwhile, had fallen in love with blueprints. He spent hours sketching out water flow designs and airflow systems on the glass wall like he was painting. His hands moved like he was rewriting the veins of the city itself. When a visiting city official once asked why he made the diagram so complex, Tarek didn't miss a beat. He just said, "The pipes under our feet don't simplify themselves for us. Why should we simplify the way we learn to fix them?" And Preston? He came every week. No press, no speeches. Just a man in quiet clothes, sitting in the back of the room, notebook on his lap, watching like someone who was finally learning how to see. He never interrupted. He never asked for attention. Sometimes he helped carry chairs, sometimes he just took notes, and once, when a little girl asked him if he was the rich guy who used to be on TV, he smiled, looked down at the oil stains on his jeans, and replied, "I used to be important. Now I'm just trying to be useful." The Underline project wasn't just a program. It grew roots, literal and figurative. Other neighborhoods started calling. Abandoned lots got surveyed. Old maintenance hubs became classrooms. Some kids built solar panels from toaster parts. Others turned broken fans into cooling systems for summer shelters. It wasn't charity. It was engineering. It wasn't saving. It was restoring. Everywhere the project went, it carried a different kind of blueprint. One sketched in resilience, in muddy fingerprints and taped-up notebooks. And through it all, Tarek and Malik never once asked for their names to be put up front. They still lived in the same house, still shared the same cracked phone, still ate dinner at the folding table their mama fixed with duct tape. But Preston made sure people remembered who lit the fuse. On every document, on every grant proposal, on every wall plaque, he made sure the first line read the same. Boone Brothers, Infrastructure Initiative, engineered from below. Because if you build something with your own hands, deep in the dirt where no one's looking, and you use it to pull others up, you don't need a title. You just need the city to finally look down and say, "That's where the future started." The plaque was small, but it gleamed like it carried the weight of a monument. Fixed right above what used to be a rusted storm drain on the corner of 12th and Berks, it caught the morning light just enough to make folks pause when they passed. The words were simple, etched deep into the metal. "Two Brothers Gate, not everyone underground is beneath you. Sometimes they're the ones holding the city up." Preston stood off to the side during the unveiling, hands clasped behind his back, letting the crowd gather without fanfare. He didn't want a microphone, didn't want to cut another ribbon. He just watched Tarek and Malik step forward in their worn sneakers, heads held high, not looking for applause but offering something even more lasting. Proof. Proof that kids from the gutter could build something clean. Proof that a name on a plaque could belong to someone without a bank account but with backbone. Their mama cried that day. Not loud, not messy, just a slow release, one hand over her mouth, the other gripping a chair she didn't need to sit in. Preston walked up quietly after, held out a folded piece of paper. Ownership rights, notarized, signed. The building was hers. It belongs to the boys, he said, but it starts with you. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't know what to say. The city sent press later that week. A reporter asked Malik what he wanted to do next. He looked around the center, the kids gluing circuits to skateboards, the girls mapping rainfall data on cracked tablets, and he said, "Same thing we've been doing. We build, we fix, we stay." Tariq added, "Some people build from above. We just happen to start from underneath." The reporter smiled, not quite getting it. But the neighborhood did. When the rain came again, the city held steady. No flood, no panic. Because somewhere, beneath the streets, systems designed by two boys who once got laughed at for smelling like sewer water were holding steady. That gate? It never closed again. And the plaque? It stayed shiny. Not because someone polished it, but because every kid who walked by ran their fingers across the words, like they were reading Braille for the soul. And Preston, he stopped showing up every week. He didn't need to anymore. The city had new architects now. They just happened to wear hoodies, speak in code slurs, and carry the smell of salter and purpose wherever they went. Because that's how you rebuild a city. One gate, one gear, one name at a time. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.